Previously I had a question asked on one of my videos, so I wanted to take the time today to talk about the fear of death. The topic comes up every now and then, but it's not one that is really talked about that frequently in our modern world and modern cultures. Tibetan Buddhism is particularly interesting because they have a lot of rituals and practices for approaching death. In some terms, they very much think about life as a journey towards death, a preparation for it. So, it's possible we could have been born into one of these cultures which at least are meeting the idea. There seems to be something we're doing which really creates fear around death. I don't think this video is going to completely erase that fear that you may have, but nevertheless it might give you some new ideas for approaching death. There's room for our relationship to death to change. We can be someone who's debilitated by it, or it is also possible to be someone who it doesn't really bother. Here are how the insights of meditation can change our relationship to death. Meditation is a really useful concept for decreasing the fear of death, because when we meditate, we really highlight the moment-by-moment experiential nature of our existence. Who we are and what we are can become less attached to the full storyline of our history and more attached to the apparent nature of what our experience is. We don't have to be someone, for instance, who has a history of anxiety or a history of fear. We're just someone who in a moment is anxious or in a moment is being fearful. Thus is the meditative insight about fear of death that we can apply here. When we're becoming fearful of death, this is a momentary experience. It doesn't necessarily mean anything more than we're having a momentary experience of fear. And this is a really positive insight, because sometimes when we're fearful of death, we think that that fear is the real thing. We're moving along in our life, the fear comes up, and what we're lost in is being completely terrified about the idea of ceasing. But we can change the frame, we can change the way we're looking at it, and instead see that this momentary, transient experience of fear is just coming and going, and we can learn how to let that fear come and go more smoothly. You're not someone who's fearful of death, you're someone who has moments of being fearful of death, and those moments of being fearful won't necessarily always be there. In fact, right now we might discover ways that we experience less of those moments. Here's a question for you. How do you want your life to be? Do you want your life to be full of moments of being fearful? Or would you like your life to be moments of not being fearful, of not caring about things that you can't do much about? That's an opportunity we have. And just by asking ourselves that question and making the question of how we want our lives to be our top priority, our top value, we can then conduct our lives to suit that purpose. That's our top value. So even if we're fearful and we don't understand why we shouldn't be, we just won't do that, because we want our life to have more moments of being happy. When we're being fearful of death, we're just having a momentary experience. The conditions which cause different momentary experiences in our life, they can always be worked with and changed. So it's not a fear of death we have, it's just a habit which we're learning to work with. The second insight to help us cope with the fear of death that we get from meditation is that we realize who we think we are, or what we think we are, is different. When we fear death, we fear losing our history, our thoughts, our story, everything we take to be us, all the people we know. We fear losing all of that. But to fear losing that implies that we think that those things are real. We think that that is who we are. We believe that we're on this earth meaningfully making choices in our world, creating our story. Meditation really challenges our concept of self, advanced meditation. And it's possible through meditation to have an insight into non-duality and fundamentally believe ourselves to be something other than that which we had previously taken ourselves to be. If we have this insight, we see through who we thought ourselves to be, and we no longer fear losing them. We realize there never was anyone to fear losing. That was an assumption of who we thought we were, how we thought the world worked. We had this story, and through meditation we see that the story isn't the way we thought it was. We realize it's not true. So of course, if we have this insight, conceptually, fear of death no longer makes any sense. We might still fall into the habit, but we've got a new premise for how we understand ourselves to be, and death is just another experience. It's another moment that we will be there for, and if we remove our judgments of it, well then there is no fear. Fear is a judgment. With meditation we learn how to be in the moment for what it is, surrendered or accepting our lives or our experience moment by moment. If we have insight into that as the nature of who we really are, and there's no one to judge it or control it or say otherwise, then we are non-judgmental. And I guess that's the third flow on insight about how meditation can change our relationship to death. We can identify that our fear of death is a habitual experience we're falling into. We can see that the experience is based on assumption or perhaps a little bit of ignorance of how we take the world and ourselves to be. And then thirdly, we can develop stability in the experience of non-duality, to be in the world and experience life and reality without judgments and assumptions ever. So now we step out of the conceptual understandings to move our ideas around. That's normally how we progress through ideas. We get new ideas and that helps us see it differently until we change our actual experience. It's possible to change our experience today in which the fear of death never arises in us again. And my bonus response to this fear of death is that if at least we can just be a little bit more open, we don't necessarily know that death means the end of anything we take to be important. We just simply don't know. The meditative background where I get my teachings from, they don't suggest that the end of life is some void that we conceptualize in the Western world. You know, the background of psychedelic ideas about what happens after death, there's some interesting things there. Every now and then new ideas in physics are developed which really challenge our understanding of what we take this all to be. And as I've kind of suggested throughout this video, even through meditation, your relationship to what you thought the world was can change drastically. Reflect, if it doesn't give you too much anxiety, on the mystery of being here in this very specific way. It couldn't have been any other way, but it's this way. The idea that death is just a void, that could be the case. I think that's where the fear comes from, right? Is this nothingness? I'm not entirely convinced that that is the absolute answer. So in the meantime, may we all remain not judgmental in our experience, surrender and accept things as they are. Notice that when we're having an uncomfortable time, there's either conditions we can change or we're just falling into a habit which we can turn away from. May we all come to know such wonderful ways of being. Who we think we are or what. Good morning.
Sorry about interrupting.
No, that's okay.
And
And I'm like, I'm still trying to learn mine. But she'll just have.
honestly, I do not believe it. Don't know.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Lovely morning.
You too.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.